Thank you for joining us for our final session of the day, session 4, where we're going to be talking about advancing green tech for a net zero future, which I like to think is very much the crescendo of the 2023 Hong Kong Green Finance Association Annual Forum. And I say this in good part because in this session we're going to be talking really and focusing on solutions, which certainly I find to be some of the more interesting aspects of green finance. So specifically, we're going to be looking at the role of green tech in advancing net zero goals. We're also going to be looking at how to unlock public funding and incentivize private capital to finance green tech innovation. And perhaps most importantly, we're going to be exploring whether we're doing enough in Hong Kong to be competitive in this ever increasingly competitive space. So let me start really by introducing our panelists. And I'll start by order of distance, if I may. So at the other end of the stage, Philip Ng. Philip is Vice Chairman of the Green Development Institute and General Manager of the Green Technology Centre. Welcome, Philip. Next to Philip, we have Jason Tu. Jason is co-founder and CEO of MioTech. Next to Jason, we have Poman Lo. Poman is Vice Chairman of the Century City International Holdings Limited and Vice Chairman and Managing Director of Regal Hotels Group. Welcome, Poman. Next to Poman, we have Jacob Sorensen. Jacob is Director, Partner Funds Division, Climate Change and Sustainable Development Department at the Asian Development Bank. And right next to me, Tassos Zavitsanakis. Tassos is the co-head of APAC Sustainable Finance Office with UBS. So thank you all very much for sharing your afternoons with us and sharing your knowledge and experience with our audience today. So to set the scene, I thought we should just remind delegates and perhaps ourselves about why green tech is important. And I have to say that it really wasn't until preparing for this year's annual forum and for this session that I really understood how important green tech has become. Now, earlier this morning, we heard from Mr. Wang Xin of the G20 Sustainable Finance Working Group, who told us that green tech is now one of the 3 green finance priorities of the G20. Closer to home, of course, we heard this morning from Financial Secretary Paul Chan, who reiterated the Hong Kong government's priority to promote the development of Hong Kong into an international green tech centre. And 2 panels ago, Selina of FSTB mentioned the Green Technology and Finance Development Committee that has been put together with all sorts of great and good, including Dr. Ma, I believe, to help work out an action plan to achieve our objectives in green tech space. So all this sounds very promising. We've heard, over the years, good amount of green talk. Let's sort of explore to see whether or not there's some real sort of substance and green action behind our green tech commitment. So let's turn to our panelists. And people may not realize that this is the 2nd year in a row that Tassos has graced my panel. So as your reward, sort of backed by popular demand. So your reward is to go first. So Tassos, let's get things started by helping us, if you could, understand why green tech is important to Hong Kong's green finance ambitions, and how easy is it? Or how easy is it going to be for us to direct capital where we need it in green tech? Tassos.
No, that's great, Ben. And it's always a pleasure. Trying to enjoy the conversations. We'll try and keep it short this time, okay? Now, let me first start a little bit with what does it actually take to be a leading green financial hub. I think financial hubs in the future will have to compete on their green credentials. We're asking corporates to do that. Financial hubs will have to do that. And that will also require for them to be able to demonstrate track record in terms of the impact that they have and the outcomes that they have achieved to 2030, and also how they will have to communicate of what they plan to do then to 2050. Now, according to the World Resources Institute, there is a couple of, let's say, elements of key building blocks that a good or a leading green financial hub needs to demonstrate. And I'll just quickly list them out, right? I mean, the first one is having an enabling regulation and incentive framework around sustainability, demonstrating that there is leadership across key change agents. It needs to demonstrate that it can help influence behaviors and social norms. And we need to have the evidence to demonstrate that there is corporate sustainable leaders and institutions. And I think this panel today, as well as all the whole day, has demonstrated, right, that we have quite a lot of them. And the last one is, of course, innovation and technology. I think over the last few years, despite what COVID has created, the Hong Kong government has managed to actually put all the building blocks in place, and the later one, of course, with the innovation and green technology. Through the recent formation of the Green Tech and Finance Development Committee, which I'm sure Poman will be able to say more about it in a while. But it also put financial commitments. I mean, there's a good thing to have the formation of committees, but you also need to put also money on the table. And there was, in the recent 2023 budget, right, there was $1.2 billion in US that will go towards finding better ways of commercializing research and development results. Now, why green tech, though, is important, right? I mean, there's a little bit of a simple answer to that, because, I mean, the investment opportunity that we have ahead of us will not come again. If we also assume that we only have a specific carbon budget, right, of what we need to achieve by 2050. So, and because in Hong Kong we also like to talk numbers, and we like financial incentives, we like opportunities, we want to put money, make money. Let me put a little bit that into a little bit of a context. Now, at the global level, to get to net zero transition by 2050, we need to be spending about 3 to 5 trillion on an annual basis. China will have to pretty much increment, according to IEA, its annual spend to about 650 billion by 2030, and then to close to 1 trillion by 2060. So, as you can do quick the calculations, most of that financial flow will be directed towards China, towards Asia. And I think there is a good reason about that, because most of the majority, unfortunately, of the emissions are also in the region. So we need to address that. So the second one that I would like to clarify is that when we talk about green tech or clean tech or climate tech, a little bit similar terms there, we're not just talking about the next ESG software around measurement. I'm not saying this is not required. It's hugely important to have transparency and disclosure and measurement, because what gets measured gets done. But at the same time, the technologies that we are talking about here is technologies that are going to be solving for the big problems. We're talking about the clean hydrogen, we're talking about carbon capture, battery storage facilities, waste to energy facilities. I mean, this is heavy infrastructure, heavy project risk, first of its kind type of projects, as we call them, that will also require very different financial structures. So we're therefore at the stage of 10 to 15 years ahead of us of real infrastructure investment. We're starting now. We have this time frame to demonstrate, deploy, and commercialize at scale these technologies by 2030, if we want to actually have any chances about meeting the 2 degrees target. Now, in summary, therefore, I think if we actually think that it's important to develop a green-enabled ecosystem within Hong Kong, because that's the only way that if we also understand in depth these emerging technologies, we'll be able to make sure that Hong Kong is future-proof for the future, and it becomes relevant and it has leadership in order to activate and to be a contributor to this transition. Second part of your question was, and how is it going to be? I think, what I want to very quickly say, it's like, let's discuss about the size of the problem. We're talking about that we are currently emitting 50 gigatons of carbon per year. Now, what we will have to be doing by 2050 is removing approximately 5 gigatons per year. We're no closer to that. There's not a single technology commercially viable today, or even a company that can make a claim that they can remove 1 gigaton of CO2. The commercial facilities that exist today, they probably can do about 50 million tons of CO2. And the cost of that is between 1,000 to 2,500 euros per ton of CO2 of abatement. That's not scalable at this form. Now, let's look at the time frames as well, right? And let's look at Tesla, for example, as a good breakthrough innovation, right? And how long it took them. So Tesla was established in 2003, produced its first electric vehicle car in 2008, 5 years after. 7 years after, they went to IPO in 2010. In the meantime, until they did and where we are today, Tesla has done about 38 funding rounds. Now, how much electric vehicles do we have? Right now, it's about 10% of the vehicles that are being available on the ground. About 50% of that is from Tesla. 10%. We started in 2003. Avoided emissions, a very important new term that's been talked about. When Tesla produced its impact report in 2022, 130 million tons of CO2. It's nothing, right? Now, there are very interesting technologies out there. Founders are doing amazing stuff. And it's actually quite easy to map currently where we are, some technology to a sustainable development goal. Now, if they cannot, I would just definitely advise them to stop and think, because there are 17 development goals. You must be able to find something. And if you're an investor and they cannot articulate that, just run away, because it's very basic. Now, there's a key difference, though, green technology, right? I said it's heavy infrastructure. You need to be able to be in a position to demonstrate technological and financial viability with no data. You need to be able to understand what are the different capital structures that you will need to have as you grow over 15 years. It's not just a software where you need the VC, you will have a high growth within 2-3 years. You need actually to develop something, implement it, deploy it, and scale it. And there is engineering heavy development risk there. And you need the right talent. You need engineers, you don't just need coders. So there's that marrying up of software and hardware that needs somehow to come together. So my suggestion, right, and what I see is, right, is that if we want to make it easy and to make sure that we have less failures, I mean, the traditional VC model, let me invest 1,000 to only have one, it can't work here. Because we can't have 1,000 manufacturing plants failing. So my suggestion is that we probably need to rethink a little bit about the investment framework. We probably need like a new platform-based and partnership-enabled finance and investment ecosystem that brings together, first of all, minimum bankability criteria of what should be invested from a technological and science-based approach. We need to provide access to blended finance, bring different capital structures, whether that's private, whether that's governments, whether that's philanthropic, whether that's from foundations and development funds, in order to de-risk these projects. And as UPS, we have worked quite a lot on that, and we have good understanding of the complexities that are involved. We need to provide guidance and transparency to founders in order to know where to go, when to go, and where to find the different financing depending on the stage of growth they are. We need to create a community of investors. The community of investors need to be different. They need to be willing to take additional development risk. They can be impact investors. They can be corporate VCs. These are the interesting. We need to deploy these technologies. And lastly, we need to develop and train the required workforce. We need more engineers that will actually build and maintain those technologies. So the last point is that these are a lot, but what I would definitely, however, if I were to start, is a net zero transition plan at the government level, at the corporate level, so that every entrepreneur can understand where their technologies fit within the broader solution.
Okay, I'm going to jump in there. Otherwise, you're going to answer everyone's questions for them.
Oh, okay.
No. So Poman, if we can sort of pass the mic to you. I mean, Tassos mentioned to us that we need tech to solve some of the big problems. We don't really have the tech in order that we need to solve the big problems doesn't really exist yet. He mentioned we need different financial structures and a sort of community of investors to I suppose, to direct capital where we need to support and advance tech solutions. How can venture capital act as a catalyst to all of this?
Well, first of all, I want to say that sustainability is truly the defining challenge of our century, but it could also be the greatest opportunity, simply because we all don't know how to navigate this transition, and it will be the greatest transition in the history of humankind to transition away from our fossil-based economy, and we have to do it urgently to save this one and only planet that we all share. So our collective goal is to really turn this challenge into an opportunity for sustainable growth, for innovation, and also long-term value creation. So, around the world, we have over 70 countries committing to net zero. We have 80% of Fortune 500 companies making some sort of climate pledge. The only, commonality is that I think we're all trying to navigate through all this. No one knows the answer. And technology is the only solution. I think, Hong Kong has pledged to net zero by 2050. Again, to do that, we have to rely on technology. We are positioned as the global green finance center. We're uniquely positioned to maximize our synergies with the GBA, also to become a leading green tech hub. Again, to do that, to attract talent, I think that's the key KPI of our Hong Kong government, to attract talent, to attract companies, we need venture capital. We need to take that leap of faith and not just have, rely on track records, because simply this is a new space. It's a new opportunity, and therefore we have to really shift our mindset from traditional investing to investing with purpose. And obviously, we also need a spectrum of capital for different projects. Some would be for ESG investing to impact investing to some that would require philanthropic capital. So to drive actionable solutions, we need to put money where our mouth is. And I would say venture capital is the only way to really drive the innovation needed for this transition. So luckily in Hong Kong, we actually have 7 top universities providing all the talent and all the inventions. But we really do have to deploy strategic catalytic capital to make that difference, to empower,
Sorry for interrupting, but let me just, as a follow-on to your last remarks, I mean, with your sort of investor hat on, are we seeing sort of investment opportunities in this field for, venture capital investment opportunities in this area?
Well, we are, because actually 13 years ago, that's when I embarked on this sustainability journey, and we launched the first carbon neutral hotel in Hong Kong. And since then, to help decarbonize our operations and buildings, we have been investing in green tech companies, and I would say with pretty good success. And it's really encouraging to see that companies can actually do well by doing good. And I would say the stars have finally all been aligned now for the next wave of unicorns to be green tech companies that can help us with this transition. And that's why, I've set up a fund, because, Asia is the world's greatest emitter. We actually produce 2/3 of the world's emissions, and yet we are lagging behind, sadly. And significantly in terms of impact investing, we only account for roughly 13% of all the impact investing capital. So we really do have to catch up. And that's why I've created this platform for more like-minded partners to be investing in prop tech solutions, in clean tech, in agriculture and food tech, because technology breakthroughs are what we need to really drive this transition. And I would say that actually there is no need to compromise the return. In fact, a lot of companies are successful because of the impact they deliver rather than in spite of. So there ought to be a positive correlation. And if these companies actually exist to solve those environmental challenges, and these are existential challenges, there's no way they wouldn't be delivering outsized returns. So our fund, our mission is very clear: to empower the next wave of startups that can provide disruptive solutions. So we are their impact partner, because obviously these startups, they cannot afford to hire someone like Tazos as their chief sustainability officer. So we will come in as their partner to help them with setting the right KPIs and targets, help them with impact measurement and management. We also come in as their commercial partner. So we have established partnerships with leading universities. There's actually a global alliance of universities on climate led by Tsinghua University with tons of top-notch scientists. And we help them to pilot, commercialize, and scale their solutions through our network. And most importantly, we are their Asian partner, because actually, as a lot of you might know, China is actually one of the most seriously committed countries in the world to net zero. So they have set very clear dual carbon targets. They would definitely be transitioning to renewable energies. So it's a market that cannot be missed. So when we meet with startups in, say, Israel or Europe, where the local market actually is very small, they are very keen to work with Hong Kong-based funds that can help them penetrate Asia, and especially China. So we help them with knowledge transfer, with establishment of local JVs, with the recruitment of local talent to penetrate in Asia. So
okay, thank you so much, because I think it's implicit. I think that to become a sort of a green tech hub, we need to be willing to support innovation. We need to be willing to support the entrepreneurs, and I think your remark should give a lot of sort of confidence, or some confidence to entrepreneurs and innovators that we may not have the infrastructure in place that we want yet, but there is certainly there's a venture capital sort of scene in Hong Kong to support these sorts of green tech businesses and entrepreneurs. Thank you so much. So let's sort of pass the microphone, if we can, to Philip. Philip, we've heard from Poman that we need venture capital to attract talent. We heard about the opportunity in this space. What are some of the other sort of essential characteristics to consider for Hong Kong to achieve our ambition to be a leading green tech hub?
Yeah, I think there are quite a number of elements to enable such the building of the successful green tech hub in Hong Kong. I think the first is regarding the technology ecosystem. What I mean by ecosystem is not single alone one player who can make it happen. It actually requires first the leading corporate, just like those companies who can deliver or open up the scenario for the green tech to apply. Either it can be a real estate company who can offer the opportunities for the green tech in the green building area, or is an traditional energy company who can open up the opportunities for those new renewable energy, like those hydrogen or new fuel energy company startups to apply in that scenario. So that's the first player on the leading corporate area. The second is on the investor, those who can really give money to those fueling the startup throughout their growth journey. The third is on those research institutes, including all those universities, and also like local research institutes like the NAMI, etc. here in Hong Kong. So that's the third player. The fourth one actually is the most important one. That's the startup themselves. Those are the area that can fuel the growth of the technology and innovation. And of course, last but not least is also the government and the technology parts, which provide the policy support and also the space or some acceleration and the incubation services to help the startup to grow. So if you look at the whole ecosystem and we try to look into some of the particular segment, like in the funding area, currently as we know that Hong Kong already grew as one of the largest green finance center in Asia, amounting to over $80 billion US. But most of those actually are in the form of loan or credit. These kind of financial product actually can help the green tech company, but not at the early stage. It's usually only being given to companies at a later stage, like those reaching C round or beyond. But if we want to really build up a green tech hub here in Hong Kong, probably we need to guide more money into the earlier stage, like A and B rounds. That can be in the form of a government supported fund or plus some market-driven fund to drive these part of the funding requirements.
Let me just jump in there, if I may, because we heard from Selina of FSTB earlier, and she mentioned the Green Tech Fund. She also mentioned green bonds incentives. So what government funding is available, particularly to cover this sort of early stage, this critical early stage of the sort of green tech innovation business?
Yeah, I understand there are quite a couple of the funds currently being offered by the government, and also including technology parks like Cyberport and Science Park. Most of those are actually matching funds or R&D funds. It's not actually like if we look at some mature market like the Silicon Valley or in some cities in Shenzhen, Shanghai, or Beijing, it actually is a market-driven VC funds. So for those government supported funds like the ITF, they actually have been giving out 400 million Hong Kong dollars to around 130 companies already across various sectors, not in particular for the green tech area. And also there are, as I said, there are Cyberport and Science Park matching fund, which can actually to support those startups if they can secure some lead investors in the market. The third one is the EEB's driven Green Tech Fund, also amounting to 400 million in Hong Kong, largely to supporting the green tech related in the R&D area. It's not in the commercialization phase or help you to populate the impact or the application of the green tech. So there are very couple of those funding, but we believe there's an important missing element is on those early stage equity-based VC-related funding can be driven by the market or by the government as the lead. So the third element that we believe that's important is that market opportunities that we can create. If we can create enough market opportunities here in Hong Kong, actually is leveraging the China's, which is the world's biggest green tech application market. We probably can attract many green tech companies in the US, Europe, or Japan. All these companies come to Hong Kong, land here with some kind of research and development or a regional office here, and then serving Hong Kong local market and also the bigger China market, and later on the Belt and Road market. So we are already actually starting to talk to some of these startups in different parts of the world. I think this market opportunities point actually is very attractive to them. Many are indicating their interest if really we can create some real opportunities for them here, help them land here in Hong Kong and facing a larger market potential in Hong Kong and China region. So that's the third element. The fourth one we believe is important is also the standards and certification area. We just attend the Hong Kong Green Building Council's launch of the Green Building Certification just two weeks ago. Basically, that is a good example that set an sub-vertical standard or certification standards for the later on the green financing entities to rely on or to design their products based on these kind of the certifications. So the final one actually is very important, is on the talent. Currently, we have a very good program under the Hong Kong GFA on the Green Finance Talent Development Program. But there is another part I think we need more work is on the green technology programs that actually can nurture and help those entrepreneurs in the green tech area to how to grow their company.
Okay, thank you, thank you. We've heard from the bank, we've heard from venture capital, we've talked a little bit about sort of grant money that's available for sort of very early stage, sort of R&D stage. In our earlier sessions today, Eddie from HKMA and then King from FSDC, they both mentioned PPP. Okay, and we don't normally sort of think of Hong Kong and PPP in the same, so we don't use those words in the same sentence. So my question, and it's perhaps to any one of the panelists who would like to try and tackle it, what's the role and importance of sort of public money in the sort of financing the advancement of green tech in Hong Kong? Does anyone want to have a bash?
Sure. I can put on my entrepreneur hat a little bit. First of all, just to share some trajectories or history of MioTech. Out of the 4 rounds that were previously raised, 3 rounds were led by investors who actually sit in Hong Kong.
Wow.
That's how important Hong Kong is as a financing hub to startups. MioTech itself, now as a Series C company and the largest sustainability data and software provider, manifests the importance of Hong Kong in the overall kind of a financing of green tech. Not only fintech, green tech is a much broader scope. Mm-hmm. Now back to your question about government fund. I'm personally also in touch with a lot of, especially with the MA, the Hong Kong Reserve Fund, and the upcoming Hong Kong Investment Corporation. I want to just share my kind of a firm support to the Hong Kong government. And I've seen a lot of really good movements this year where the government is actually moving forward with a lot of what I call market approach type of money deployment into the financing market. For example, I know Hong Kong IC has already given out 6 to 8 different mandates to GPs to rely on GPs in the market, the general partners in the market, instead of just investing the money by themselves. So I think the public money is extremely. So I think public money or government money is extremely important in this market. Given that Hong Kong government has the firepower in its pocket, but having said that, I think the government is taking the right approach to give out the money to the GPs, to the market participants in the market, so that they can make informed, market-driven capital market decisions rather than just relying purely on the government to invest in sectors.
Great. Yeah, that's quite new, I believe. This is the HKIC. The investment company.
Yeah, I also think, we've also been in touch with a lot of other government, semi-government, or even mainland government or / Hong Kong government, or like the STP funds. I think Hong Kong now, in terms of, a lot of people previously think of Hong Kong as a more late stage capital market and go an IPO place. Right now, especially in green tech and sustainability tech, I think we're moving to the earlier stages where a lot of the government, or what I call quasi semi-government funds, are actually looking into investing in an earlier stage of these good companies. And perhaps to add a little bit of color to this. From MioTech's perspective, we're now in a decent size and in relatively later stage. We're also thinking about how we can feed back to the market and invest back into the market. And recently, MioTech has also made a small investment and kind of a quote-unquote co-founded a kind of a sister company that does, for example, battery recycling. Think of the EV adoption in China right now is already standing at 30%. Until 2026, a massive amount of batteries are going to retire from the first batch of electric vehicles. So that just as an example tells hopefully tells everyone with a real world example of how this Hong Kong community, startup plus the investment community is evolving. And now, even as a startup, we're feeding back into the ecosystem and trying to promote and help the overall kind of ecosystem.
Thank you. Philip, did you want to comment?
I think maybe share some of the observations. Previously, we also saw actually quite a lot of those PPP projects in this area, but the success rate is only half-half. Frankly, largely due to the unclear what they call the ROI. When you forecast an ROI, and then it turns out to be quite a different result. So and also the lack of the clarity within all the different roles of different players. So there are some recent development that the Breakthrough Energy, which is actually initiated by Bill Gates in the US. They raised over $10 billion, largely to focus on a few sectors like those carbon capture, long duration energy storage, these kind of climate-related technology. And they can actually nurture those companies from very early stage to commercialization stage. And they actually form a quite interesting PPP. It's together with the European Union and also the European Investment Bank and quite a few large corporates together form a PPP model, actually trying to bring the companies or technology they invest actually to a commercialization and large-scale adoption phase.
Yeah, okay. So I mean, I think Tassos shared in his remarks, how important it's going to be to come up with sort of different financial structures, with sort of frankly money coming in at multiple levels from multiple different sources over sort of different stages of the, I suppose the development and evolution of the green tech business. I guess what we want to know is, what's available in Hong Kong, but we'll let people come back and email you about that. Let's move on, if we may, and bring Jacob into the conversation. So we've heard from banks, we've talked about VC, PE, and grant money, et cetera, Jacob. But what's the role of development banks in supporting the advancement of green tech? And if possible, if you could share some of the sort of interesting structures that you've seen that will sort of continue that sort of thought process that we've started.
Thanks so much, Ben, and let me just pick up on some of the breadcrumbs that my friends here on the panel have put. I mean, if you allow me just to scale out and look a little bit at the region first and sort of come into the Hong Kong aspect later. I mean, we all know that more than half the world's population is living in Asia. As you said, Asia is already the biggest emitter of CO2 in the world. Unfortunately, Asia is also the fastest growing emitter of CO2 in the world. But this is also counterboxed by the fact that the majority of the climate victims are also living in Asia. So we are in a very precarious situation. Now, when you're looking around the region, the reality is that the majority of the population in Asia is living in degrees of developing countries. So that means that we have to very carefully calibrate the financial intervention and the technology we're using. We can come up with very sophisticated clean tech here in Hong Kong or Japan or Korea, but that might not necessarily be the right sustainable solution in some of the poorest countries of the world. We all know we have to move from billions to trillions. That's all well and good. And we all know that that is supposed to happen by mobilizing the private sector. I mean, that's cute, but what does that actually mean? Again, if we're looking at the angle that we need to have serious interventions in developing Asia, reality is that the majority of private sector firms, international banks, and capital markets are not comfortable with the risks that are faced in developing Asia. And that means, as you said, in the capital stack or in the project design, in the technology design, we really have to look very carefully at the risks that are associated with a green project. And we have to slice out those particular risks, and we have to assign it to those risk takers who are best positioned to take those risks, whether that's technology risk, whether it's financial risk. And that puts the multilateral development banks in a unique situation because we have a greater risk appetite than the commercial markets. As you probably know, ADB and the other MDBs are in the business of project design, lending, both to the sovereign sector and also to the private sector. But when we say we lend to the sovereign side, reality is it's private sector firms who's building the projects. The money just flows through the government. So everything we do is ending up on the private sector table. So what to do about this? ADB has reinvented ourselves from having a poverty focus to being, as we like to call it, the climate change bank for Asia and Pacific. Sorry. We are operating in a very unique space because we are owned by the governments in Asia and outside of the region. We have unique access to the governments. We are working closely with them to create the enabling environment for private sector to be able to operate in these countries. On the other side, of course, we're working with the international community. We're working also with the technology providers and the vendors, as well as the local communities. So I just want to mention two initiatives that we in ADB is doing. One thing is we need to extend our own lending capacity. We are a $20 billion bank. That is a lot of money, but this is nothing in terms of what is needed. We, as everybody else, also have scarce resources. The resources we have, we try to put into effective measures such as blended finance. But we also need to extend our own lending capacity. We have recently announced a large guarantee scheme which will provide $15 billion worth of additional lending, which will lead to somewhere between $45 and $60 billion worth of projects on the ground. And again, let me repeat, these projects will all be built by the private sector. So this is a massive scale across Asia and the Pacific. Additionally, in order to reach the climate ambitions and the net zero, no amount of carbon capture can help us. And as you say, this just doesn't work. It's not bankable, it's not scalable, it's not financially viable. What we need to do is we need to turn off the power assets, the existing coal-fired power assets. So ADB has also launched a program we call the Energy Transition Program, which through a means of soft loans, concessional finance from philanthropies, from governments, working together also with capital markets and with the banks to refinance the existing power assets to decommission these power plants up to 7 years early. That is where the real CO2 reduction comes from, not from Tesla, although they're nice. So we are doing a lot of initiatives. We are trying to put finance and risk appetite out in the market to enable effectively all of you to be able to do what you do best. So thanks.
Great, thank you. I can see we have a question for from the audience, and there's one directed right back at you, Jacob. How does ADB decide how to how to allocate capital most effectively? And I think the second part of the question is asking, does ADB invest in startups or only in sort of infrastructure projects?
Sure. We are primarily an infrastructure bank. 80% of what we're doing is infrastructure. We do have a small, what we call ventures fund. It is a relatively new space for us, but we are fundamentally agnostic for technology. We are speaking with the countries, identifying the need, then we are designing projects based on that. So we don't necessarily go and say technology A is better than technology B. We look at the need, so that's how we're designing it. Listen, the problem we are seeing on the ground is actually not lack of money, not fundamental. It's the lack of the bankable projects. So it's working with the government to create the enabling environment, find the right project sponsors, the firms who is literally willing to set up shop in Papua New Guinea to build a climate change or green tech project on the ground. And there's very far in between the firms who have the risk appetite to literally set up shop in what they perceive to be an unknown market, a dangerous market with political risks, maybe weak sustainability, weak finance. So we have a lack of projects as the main issue, not so much a lack of finance. But of course, everybody wants more money, no doubt about that.
Okay, super. Well, let's move on. Jason, we've been talking about the universe that you actually sort of function in, your business functions in. You've remarked a little bit about some of the sort of the government funding that's available. Being a, I think, profile and hopefully super successful green tech business, what do you have any comments that you want to sort of share, sort of in response to any of the remarks that you've heard from our panelists?
Yes, absolutely. I think just want to kind of compliment to some of the comments that Philip and Poman made, for example, in terms of the importance of Hong Kong. We all talked about the financing part. And the other part, I think Poman referred to as measurement, and Philip referred it to as the standard setting. I think that's also an advantage that Hong Kong has, leading in terms of standard setting. And going back to what MioTech does in terms of ESG or sustainability, reporting, data gathering, data management, that's also why from the very beginning we chose to set up in Hong Kong as our headquarters. And I also, by the way, I saw a question over there that is really important. What is missing in Hong Kong? Just to share with everyone, back to the comment I made, and also a really interesting chat I had with some friends. I said that MioTech wants to be the bridge between the West and the East, where we actually have now represented a lot of large global financial institutions to study or to learn about the sustainability performances of the Asian companies. At the same time, we have worked together with a lot of multinational corporates to help them make sure that their supply chain is sustainable in the region, or their subsidiaries are sustainable in the region. And the response I got from my friend is that, well, you want to be a bridge, but you want to make sure that you're not stuck in between. So that's where Hong Kong is missing. I've been talking to a lot of my friends in Hong Kong that we want to embrace both sides, but not to say that we don't belong to either camp, right? So I think this is difficult. This means that you really need to have boots on the ground going to the corporates in China, in Southeast Asia, in Korea, in Japan, and local people, hire the local people to make sure that, as a company, you have the local people, local boots on the ground to talk to them. At the same time, you have you go to the investors in Europe or large multinational corporates, their headquarters in Europe, to help them to appease their concern, to make sure, to tell them relentlessly, repetitively, again and again, that trust us. Our software, our data is the one that you can trust, that that can represent Asian companies. So back to your question, just one additional remark that I want to make and kind of summarize on what the other panelists said in terms of measurement, in terms of standard. Hong Kong has a natural advantage of setting up the standard in the region, but we want to make sure that this is a standard that is going to be adopted by both sides. We want to make sure that we're not just reinventing the wheel here in Hong Kong. We'll be stuck in between the West and China. Right? So I think that's why again MioTech has decided to set up our headquarters 7 years ago here in Hong Kong, and we think that we can be the bridge from the West to the East.
Okay, thank you. Let me just ask a very direct question, because we want to hopefully give aspiring green tech entrepreneurs and innovators, every reason to sort of come to Hong Kong. So, I mean, would you recommend Hong Kong? I mean, do we have in Hong Kong what green tech companies need to develop and thrive?
Talent. It's hard to get talent here. So I think it's all about people for a startup. You succeed because you have the right people. You fail because you have the wrong people. So I think here in Hong Kong, I think, while this is not to make a comment about, I'm not supposed to make a comment about Singapore, but Hong Kong has a larger population. It has a much larger talent pool. And there's a lot of kind of rivalry between Hong Kong and Singapore. I always think that There's a very dynamic talent pool here in Hong Kong. So I think for green tech companies, the first I would recommend is to make sure that you have the access to the right talent pool and not be restricted to Hong Kong. In the sense that, I've talked to some of the large incubators, large organizations here. One comment I made, I think one thing I've been thinking about is that I've been telling them is that make sure that the brain of the company is in Hong Kong, but reach out to the mass market in China and reach out to Southeast Asia. You don't have to set up every single employee here. It does not make sense to set up a manufacturing plant, to be honest, but make sure the brain is here. You need to have talent in every single market here in Asia so that we can make sure that Hong Kong has access to all these markets.
Great, well, thank you for that. And on behalf of everyone who will benefit from those, words of advice.
I add one word though.
It's never going to be one word, let's be honest. Go for it.
Going to be a couple of sentences.
Please.
But I do want to add, to what Jason is saying, that talent, of course, is important. That's no dispute on that. But what is missing is the access to corporate implementation. And we have quite a lot of discussions with Jason as well, right? You set up a startup, you have a great product, and then you're trying to find who is willing to implement that product. And we're big organizations, it's very, very difficult to navigate who's got the money and who is actually going to be willing in order to spend time to implement a new startup within the organization. We might have the money, I don't have the time. So there's this constant chicken and egg situation, right? It's not that I don't want to support. And then someone like Jason will end up having to speak to 100 people within the same organization, thinking that he can get somewhere, but nothing will happen because he's not speaking to the right gatekeeper and he's not speaking to the person at the right time when the budget has arrived and he has time to implement. And that's also the biggest, and I'm saying it from how we have tried to integrate a lot of startups within our own organization, is sometimes money is not the problem, time is the problem. And it's the other way, right? I would love to have, for example, government to give me tax incentives so that I can work and scale up and support a startup here in Hong Kong. More than happy to do that as well, right? Where money is a problem. So that corporate implementation is super, super important, especially if you want to have the proof points and the track record.
Okay, thank you. Poman, did you want to comment on that? Because that might be sort of more sort of your
Totally
your
agree.
space.
I just want to add one line, and it's about diversity. I think, really we need to foster diversity to drive innovation, because if you only have a homogeneous group with just one voice, it's really hard to think out of the box. So we really need to embrace diversity. I'm glad at least there's one female here, but it's not just gender, but all types of diversity that we need, because ultimately, again, to achieve this oneness, to appreciate the interconnectedness of everything in life, we have to really embrace this diversity and transcend above all the cultural and national boundaries. So hopefully we can see more talent coming from around the world, converging in Hong Kong to drive this transition.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm just getting mindful of time, and I guess as we sort of commence our descent into Dr. Ma's closing remarks, I just want to sort of prepare for landing, as it were, with just a final question to all of you, and this could be a somewhat quick fire. With the question sort of, or let me frame the question. So with green tech very much a global priority, we have to anticipate that this is and will increasingly be a really, really highly competitive market. So based on everything that we've heard today, not specifically on this panel, but the comments from our previous speakers, do you feel that Hong Kong can move quickly enough in order to be competitive and thereby sort of realize our ambitions to be a leading green tech hub? I'm not sure who to ask, but Poman, you're looking at me, so why don't you go first, if you don't mind?
Well, I think Hong Kong is, first of all, very agile and resilient. And I always believe in the Chinese saying, 有危先有機, and I think we have gone through enough shit in the past few years to realize that we really need to tackle this global challenge urgently, and hopefully we can act quickly together and to capture this trillion-dollar opportunity. And I believe the fact that we have gone through such difficult times actually empowers us to really emerge as a winner and help the world.
Thank you. Just go in. Let's just start at the end. Philip, did you have any additional thoughts?
I think Hong Kong is already leading in the way that the government actually in this year's budget summary announced the vision that want to build Hong Kong as an international green tech and green finance center. When we look around, actually no other places that claim this vision or status. Like Luxembourg, they can only just say that it's the green finance center, or Singapore, etc. So nowhere in the world that they have already established this kind of vision. I think the next phase is more importantly how we can actually find some priority area in the green tech area. Like green tech is a very wide area. Like we already classify into 6 categories, over 20 subcategories, subverticals. So we need to choose from which are the priority area. Some area already very popular and attracting huge investment, like those long duration energy storage in China alone last year is over 4 trillion RMB investments into that single subvertical. So it's important that we spot out the priority area. And the second thing is that it's very important that we no longer try to treat the green tech area as some compliance or CSR angle. Basically, it's an industry growth area. That's very important. Different views and different focus that we need to treat this kind of initiative.
So you're optimistic?
Yes.
Good. Jason, did you have any additional remarks?
I am overly optimistic at this time. I think, first of all, I think the government has done its job, and all the NGOs and different organizations, they are all doing this job, setting up the right environment. Perhaps the only one comment I would make is that once the environment is ready, let the market decide which direction it needs to go. And I think Hong Kong has, as the freest market in the world, consecutively in the past, several decades, Hong Kong has the infrastructure and has the Hong Kong people also have the will to make this happen, make the green tech community into a market-driven green innovation center.
Thank you. Jacob, it might be a bit unfair to ask you specifically about Hong Kong because you're not based here. But
not
please,
at all. I'm
please
happy
comment.
to opine on things I don't know about. No, joking aside, I mean, clusters work, absolutely 100%. But you also have to be aware of your competitive advantages. I mean, you don't want to compete on equal terms with Singapore and New York and London. You have to identify what is it you're bringing to the table. And it's an all of ecosystem, all hands on deck, with a common vision of this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it. I mean, take a look at the inflation, the so-called Inflation Reduction Act in the States, where they, with $700 billion, fair enough, have changed the narrative from doom and gloom, we're all going to die, into this as a fantastic job opportunity. But this requires government, this requires private sector, requires academia, it requires everybody to back up about a common vision of this is what Hong Kong is going to look like in 5 years, this is how you're going to outcompete everybody. Then you totally have the possibility of doing that.
Thank you. Tassos.
More than one word.
Please.
Let's see. A little bit along the same lines. I think, look, I'm very optimistic. Going through hardships and challenges can only make you stronger. So Hong Kong is definitely stronger than many other parts of this of the countries in this region, right? Now, I would nevertheless just like to challenge us to be more ambitious. And what I mean by that is measuring number of green bonds, measuring how many electric vehicles I want to put in the streets, or how many gigawatt hours of green I'm going to put online. These are only signals of an intention of changing the way that you want to measure certain activities and outcomes. What I would like to, hopefully, and maybe that's putting into Poman and the Green Tech and the Finance Development Committees, let's rethink what is the theory of change that we want to have for Hong Kong. If we are to sit here and draft our impact report for 2030, what would that look like? Let's start drafting it now, and therefore being able to walk backwards in terms of what we would want to be known for. And it doesn't have to be only about what we managed to do here in Hong Kong. It's about what we've managed to enable for the region, and hopefully for the planet as a whole.
Very good. Thank you so much. So it's almost futile to try and sum up, but I think we're all optimistic with regards to our powerful sort of policy commitment to become a leading international green tech hub. We know we need lots of money. We also need, from different sources, like we've talked about, we also know we need to provide sort of time and support to our entrepreneurs and our innovators. It's not just about money. We have a track record of being agile, and that agility is going to be important to us going forward. We have to identify and understand our priorities to maintain our understand and maintain our competitive advantage. We should be ambitious, and perhaps above all else, we need talent. And so, we've heard a lot today about talent, and I have to say, on behalf of myself and GFA, and I'm sure everyone who's sort of watched and observed this conversation, we're all very grateful for the amazing talent we've had on stage today. And so thank you very much to you all. And please join me in giving a round of applause to our speakers.